Hey guys, today I thought I would walk through some photos that we took recently, just a couple days ago actually, over at Torrey Pines State Reserve. And the purpose of this is to go through a slideshow, and I used some very simple camera gear this time. A compact camera, which I'm going to share with you 2 pictures, but the rest of the photos came from a simple iPhone 6 camera. And I got some amazing pictures, and I wanted to share them with you because I just wanted to show you, you don't need to have super complicated gear, heavy gear, to get some really great pictures, and especially to make your day memorable. So I'm going to go through some of these pictures right now and just kind of walk you through my methods of composition and looking for color and light and things like that, and hopefully it will be helpful to you. All right, let's take a look at this first picture. This is actually one of 2 pictures that I took with my compact camera instead of the iPhone. I set it up on a tripod and I set it on a timer, and it was set to take 3 pictures. So it'll take 1, 2, and 3, and hopefully in one of those somebody's not blinking. I'm not really fond of this picture, but it came out good. It's a good family picture with my wife Sandy and my 6-year-old son Sean here. But one of the challenges I had before the shutter actually took the picture was there were tourists all up and down, walking up in here, all over the place. And it was a really busy day. It was a hot day, and a lot of people wanted to be near the water. And after a while, most of them cleared out except 2 people that were standing right here, and they would not move. And I was sitting there with the tripod, but they were looking out over the ocean and watching for whales or who knows what, but they wouldn't move, and I knew if they moved, then somebody else might get into the picture and we'd be waiting there a long time, and we really didn't want to be doing that. We were there geocaching and doing some earth caching with some exploring there, and it was kind of a cool day. We didn't want to be standing there all day. Well, as luck would have it, they did walk away, and I think they walked down this path this way, and right when they got near here, I was near the camera. I pressed the shutter. I heard the timer start going off. I went into my area, and there were people that were coming from this direction now. And it was like a short window of time when there was no one here to be a distraction in the picture. The 3 pictures took, and it came out nice. There are a couple things I don't like about this picture. One of them is the fact that Sean is squinting, and if you take a look at his face there, you can see he's squinting because he's looking into the sun, and this is not ideal. It makes the viewer a little uncomfortable to look at somebody who looks like they're uncomfortable. And he's a trooper. He does great. But in this particular thing, he was squinting. It would have been better if he had sunglasses on, sort of like we did. They were in his backpack, and we pulled them out a little bit later. The other thing is I could have turned it around and shot from this side, because it also says Torrey Pines State Reserve on the other side of this sign here. And I could have shot into the sun. But there's a couple things. I didn't have a strobe. I didn't have a flash to light up our faces. And the other thing was I really like the composition here. If you look at it, we've got the beach, we've got the surf, we've got some background plants, and we've got some nice foreground elements as well. They're a little dried and not as nice as I would prefer, but still a pretty nice composition and a nice picture overall. All right, so that's one of pictures I took with a compact camera. The rest of them, like this, were actually taken with this is with the iPhone. It takes great pictures. I mean, let's zoom in just a little bit here, and you'll see the resolution's good, the color is good, and Sean's holding a piece of kelp. By the way, one of the challenges of taking pictures that look, quote, normal, especially in bright sunlight, is that horizon line. When you have something like as definitive as the ocean, that has to be flat. And so, to be honest with you, most of these pictures had the horizon line just a little tilted one way or the other. And so what I did was I fixed a lot of that in post-production and made the horizon straight there. But this is a great example of pretty well lit. He's got a good expression on his face, and there's something of interest in the picture as well. This I found amusing. I actually took about 15 pictures, 20 pictures of this thing because I walked up on it, and it's amusing. If you can't read it, let me zoom in a little bit. It says, danger, unstable cliffs, stay back. And I found it amusing that the sign itself had fallen down. Definitely evidence that it's unstable cliffs, and they are. They're sandstone. They're sedimentary rock, stratified but very crumbly, so you got to stay away from them. But I found this amusing. I took several different compositions of it. At one point, I was standing closer to here, shooting this way so that I would shorten this this pole here. I shot 1x1 or a square. I shot portrait, and I got several different pictures of this rather amusing thing. So you look out for opportunities like that and then take them. And then at home, try to find the best composition that helps tell the story. Here's another picture of a different sign that had not yet fallen down, but it just shows you the steepness of the cliffs, and that's typical for around this area. So as I was saying, we were there to do some geocaching and some earth caching, and it has to do with a game. And without going into great detail, it has to do with GPS systems, geolocation, and this is a game piece. It's one of the things that you can get involved with when you go geocaching. This thing here is called the travel bug, and this thing is actually a Michelin Man air tire pressure gauge. And one of his goals, if you will, is to have his photograph taken in interesting spots. So we took him along with us and took a picture of him next to the Pacific Ocean. And one of the things I wanted you to notice about this picture is this is from the iPhone. It did a wonderful job of capturing the detail in this area over here with the grit of the rock and the detail on his face. But over here it blurred it out, which is really nice. It made for a really nice picture, and it obviously drew your eyes to focus in on this area over here while still giving you some background information to let you know that he's near the ocean, near the beach. So I like that picture, how it came out. Here's a nice picture of Sean. He's got another geocaching item here. It's called a travel bug, and he's just holding it up. One of the listeners to one of our other podcasts sent us that, and we thought he would enjoy seeing a picture of his travel bug being held by Sean in the California location here. So we like that. And again, you can see the diversity of this area with the ocean on one side and the cliffs on the other. There is me holding an algae, a Macrocystis. It's a giant kelp found out here in California, and it had recently the full moon happened a day ago or 2 days ago, and so we had some extreme high tides happening on this day. A lot of ocean currents, and part of it because of the season, and part of it because the strong ocean currents. There was a ton of seaweed that was on the beach, and here's just one example of it, and you'll see more seaweed later. So the tide was super high, and one of our goals was to get to our final destination without getting our hiking boots wet. We were hiking on sand, and everything was fine until the tide really started coming up. And then after a while, we had to take off our boots and just walk barefoot because the tide was just too aggressive, let's say, trying to get to our feet. So we walked with our hiking boots in a bag, and we walked barefoot. But this is an example of how quickly the tide was coming up. Normally the water line is way back over there, but it was, again, high tide, unusual day. So we had lunch out there, had different snacks, and I pulled out a Cliff Bar. And right away, this is, as I pulled it out, I didn't have it planned, but I said, this is interesting. I saw this icon here, the typical cliff icon, and then I knew we were near cliffs. So what did I do? I just kind of combined them and juxtaposed the one object in front of the other, and I think it makes for a pretty interesting picture there. This is a panoramic shot with the iPhone, and the iPhone, as well as many smartphones, can do these panoramic shots now. The resolution of the iPhone will allow you to capture 43 megs. 43! Think about that. You hear cameras that are 15 megapixels, 20 megapixels. This will capture an image that is 43 megs large because it's sweeping across. And it just keeps collecting data and ultimately makes a really big file. The surprising thing is the tonality, the exposure, and the focus and everything. It does a pretty good job. So take a look at this here. I can zoom in just a little bit, but if you were to look at this, it did a great job of stitching it together. Those waves were in motion, but it still calculated what it should look like. So it did a good job of a panorama on one side. Sean and Sandy, by the way, are right over there, and I walked here on my own because the waves were a little too aggressive once again, and we didn't want to try to pull Sean through there and risk him getting either really wet or falling down. And so I came over here and took this picture. I then heard some pelicans. These are brown pelicans, California brown pelicans, flying overhead. And I didn't know if the iPhone was going to be able to capture it or not, because I didn't know if it was going to focus. I didn't know how the exposure is going to be. And so all I did was point it up, try to get the composition right so I can get some cliffs in there, as well as the pattern of the seagulls, the pattern of the pelicans there. And sure enough, it got it. In fact, if you zoom in a little bit, you can still see, again, this is with a camera phone, you can still see the underside markings of the pelicans as they're flying above. And you can see some of the detail on the cliffs. Pretty impressive for a smartphone camera. So here is a view of the other side, the opposite side of where I was standing, kind of facing the other way. And again, the tide was coming in over here and coming right up to the cliffs. You can see these huge, steep cliffs that go along this entire coastline. Again, this is in San Diego, California. Up here is more of the Torrey Pines State Reserve, where you can walk around, hike. I've done that since I was a little kid. There's actually pine trees up there. It's a pretty impressive place to come and visit. But this, once again, is another panorama. I just stood there and just swept it across and got an excellent panorama from here. And you can see the waves. They've still got consistency in them right now. There's nothing too strange about them. The one thing that did happen, it was hard to see in the sunlight, was this horizon line was just a little bit tilted in the original panorama. So I adjusted that in post-processing. Here's a picture of Sean, using him as a foreground element and bringing some interest in with the rock that he's standing on. Left a little bit of kelp at the bottom just for interest, and then waited. I took several shots of this, and he's just being a goofball. He was putting his hand up and he's smiling. I did tell him to tilt his head up because the shadows on his face were so harsh that I wasn't sure if I was going to capture anything. So he not only tilted his head up, but he gave me a big happy grin and just being a goofball. And then I selected the ones where the waves look kind of cool with some cool colors and obvious action going on, and that's why I selected this one. Here's a close-up using the iPhone. I am just amazed at the amount of detail it captures. I once again wanted to compose it well. There were a couple times I couldn't see, but a couple times people were walking down the beach, so I ignored those photographs and looked through the ones that I brought home on the computer and selected the ones that I really liked. But if you zoom in here, the detail on some of the seaweed is just remarkable. Okay, and these are relatively small files, and I'm using them for the slideshow, but the actual full-size file has remarkable detail. It's got great coloration. Look at the texture on here. There was a piece of styrofoam that was originally here, and I almost missed it. It's one of those things where as you're taking the picture, you didn't even notice some element was in there. And this can happen to all of us. Have you ever taken a picture where everything seems great, the expressions on the people's faces great, their pose is great, and you get it home and then you realize that a palm tree or a flagpole or something is growing out of the person's head, and it kind of ruins the picture? And again, you might be able to fix that in post-processing, but it takes work and it doesn't always look good. So the best thing is to try to grow that awareness or skill of seeing something in the frame right when it's there. And there is a piece of junky styrofoam that was sitting there, would have completely ruined this shot. Again, I might have been able to fix it in post-processing, but just by taking it out, I removed that distraction and it gave it much more of a natural look like the way it is. I took several shots of here, and I was looking for something where there was a little bit of interest in the background in the form of waves and color and texture. And I liked how the lines of the beach here were echoed by the lines of the seaweed over here. And so I didn't really do a lot of, I didn't place the seaweed there. I didn't really compose it. All I did was compose my shot by making sure there were some foreground elements and some background elements, and ended up the way I wanted. And it came out nice. This was amazing that it even happened because it was a busy day at the beach, but at one point there was a bunch of people behind me that were walking behind me and towards me, and then a whole bunch of people that had gone down the beach much earlier, and so they were not quite that visible. And at one point, before other people overtook us, because we weren't moving that fast, right before they overtook us, I saw the scene happening with the white waves on the back, with the sort of yellow-orangish cliffs on the right side, and Sean walking and his diminutive size is excellent in this photograph because then it's balanced, per se, visually by the size, the enormity of the cliffs and the vastness of the ocean. So I really like this picture for that particular reason. It's a nice composition. I cropped it a little bit more horizontal because there wasn't really a whole lot going on in the sky over here that added more interest. So I like how this one came out, and that was my thinking on the shooting of this one. You can tell he was walking along, having a great time finding shells and finding rocks, and it was just a moment that I wanted to capture. Here's the last picture, and it is the second one that was taken on the compact camera that I used. And once again, it's set on a tripod. It's set to take 3 pictures. And we got a moment once again where there weren't any distractions. I think there might be somebody there, but there's not a whole lot of distraction going on. We also put him on a rock here, which elevated him enough so that his head was a little bit closer to ours. He's 6 years old, but if he was standing on the same ground, and especially the slope ground next to Sandy, his head would have been right about here or so. We could have put him on this side, which would have elevated him a little bit more because of the slope, but we decided to put him on the rock again for interest. So there you go. There was a quick slideshow of our tour of Torrey Pines State Reserve. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got a little bit of insight of how I think when I'm shooting some of these pictures. I'm looking for texture. I'm looking for color. I'm looking for balance. I'm looking for composition. And you know what? Since it is digital, I experiment a lot. What you don't see in the slideshow is the junk. My experiments that just simply did not turn out well. Everything from being blurry to overblown to excessively dark to poorly composed. But that's how you learn. So get out there, shoot a lot, experiment and find what is working for you. And eventually you'll get more and more of those keeper shots as you continue to practice. All right, I hope that was helpful for you. For more information, resources, tips, and tricks, go to pocketlenses.com. There you'll find lots of resources, videos, a podcast, a bunch of articles on how to take better pictures with your mobile phone, point and shoot, or advanced compact camera. And if you enjoyed these videos, subscribe to this YouTube channel because that way you'll be notified every time I put up a new video for you to watch. All right, hope that was helpful. Take care. See ya.